Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to Two Guys in a Podcast. I'm Mike Cardinale.
And I'm Tom Waite.
And we're very excited. This is our very first show.
We have some exciting content coming up for you guys on future shows. Today we're going to do some introductions, and then we're going to start our conversation on leadership. Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I have about, 30 years or so in the Navy. Been in management positions in different companies. You know, I've been at the executive level. I've been at the grunt level. So, I've learned a lot of different things over the years. I've been in a master's program for the last couple of years. And so I'm really learning a lot about, how to interact with people, how to build relationships, how to make things work. And it's a challenge because people just don't do what you want them to all the time. So trying to, continue the conversation that we're having, things that we're reading, things that we're learning, things that we use in our everyday lives. I'm really excited to bring that to everybody and hopefully continue the conversation.
Excellent. I spent some time in the Marine Corps out of high school. Since then, been working in the quality field for 22 years, mostly in a leadership position, growing, nurturing, sharpening my saw. And I think today's conversation on getting into talking about leadership is going to be how can we continually sharpen our saw? I like the idea of continuing these conversations because I got a thick head. So it takes me a while to really, you got to practice this stuff. You really got to be in the moment and consciously practicing these principles and things to really gain the best out of them. So pretty excited about having this conversation and more future ones, teamwork, mentoring, training, cultural change, various different business topics, but also some personal stuff thrown in too with some veteran discussion. We both have military background. You're actually in the Navy still.
Yes. Yep.
So we'll be able to use those skill sets and those tools and experiences we've had in the past to be able to really bring some good conversations.
Yeah, I think the differences between being a civilian and being, having military experience makes a difference in the workplace. It has both its positive and negative aspects to it. Every day I try to use some of those military tactics or principles on folks, and it just doesn't work. So I think talking about some of those differences and trying to give people different tools or avenues to say, hey, this worked for me or this didn't work for me. And so, we can talk about a couple of experiences we've had in our professional lives, and hopefully some of the folks out there can get some benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to have a job I had a while back. I had some employees that would, when I would lose my emotional intelligence, and they'd go, "Oh, Waite's going Marine again," and it was like an ongoing joke. But that doesn't translate to the business world necessarily.
Right,
so
right.
I've really had to adapt that, and really through some hard lessons. I've had to adapt my approach and my styles, and that's why this is exciting to me too, is to be able to keep that transformation going,
right,
of getting better and better and better.
I've met a lot of people that think they know what leadership is to them, and they might, but people look at leadership differently. So, for example, what is the definition of leadership to you?
Inspiring others to accomplish a goal or a mission, right? To me, a good leader, the goal, the team accomplishes the mission and doesn't even realize that there was a leader facilitating it and getting, staying on schedule and planning and things like that. The team itself feels good, gets the credit, and accomplishes the mission.
Right.
And I think that's one of the best approaches to go, is where you can lead people without them even knowing you're leading them.
Right.
It's like natural teams.
Yeah, so I work in the manufacturing industry. So it seems like it's different because it's all task oriented. So I look at leadership as the ability to inspire people and to get a job done where everybody feels good about it, right? And everybody contributes. So in the manufacturing world, it seems that it's really more about management, right? Because you're trying to get tasks done. So managers typically aren't concerned about people. They're concerned about processes. And so leaders are concerned about people, and true leaders spend the time and effort on their people, and everything else kind of falls into place. And there's been study after study after study that kind of proves that point. But like academia looks at leadership in a different way, and not all academia has landed on a definition of leadership. So you've probably read a ton of books out there on different leadership styles. As I've, through my master's program on leadership, have read a few books. Hopefully they have a lot of pictures for me, because then I can understand it a little bit better. But what I'm really excited about with this project is figuring out more and more the evolution of what leadership means to me and how I want to use it every day.
Yeah.
And I think in the manufacturing industry, it's more difficult just because of the environment. It's a harsh environment. So
you got goals, you got tasks, you got metrics you got to meet, you got orders you got to fill.
Yeah, and sometimes management doesn't look at the personal effects
right.
of getting that done, because it's all about getting the product out the door and being profitable. Companies are in business to be profitable.
Right.
So, I think as the weeks progress and as things happen, we're going to talk more and more about topics that are related to leadership, and they're going to intertwine with a whole bunch of different things.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of the discussions that we're going to have on this podcast, I think the foundation is going to be going back to leadership. A lot of the principles and things that people use in their everyday lives and their business professional lives, it's all rooted in leadership. And there's various different degrees of leadership. I think we both probably could list off a long list of people that have inspired us and or not inspired us,
right.
In a leadership position. So there are good leaders, bad leaders, and the key is being a leader, right? You can learn how to be a better leader. You can grow and implement things you read in books, or you watch, or you observe other people. You get mentored. Every time that I would go Marine and freak out on somebody, I never felt better afterwards, ever, not a single time.
Right.
Did the mission get completed? Did the job get done? Yeah, but those people probably resented doing the job because I was now dictating to them and forcing them to do it.
Right.
Is that ego coming into play there? Yeah, absolutely. That was, one of the biggest lessons in leadership, and I've learned this from a lot of the different books I've read, and the one I'm focusing on now: put your ego aside. Right? Hardest thing for humans to do, technically. But good leaders put their egos aside, and they try to inspire people without that. So you got to have the compassion, and you got to have the understanding, the human level, the human interaction, to be able to, like we said earlier, inspire people to get the job done, but also to connect, human relations, right? Have that connection to where people, they'll start anticipating what you want them to do, and they'll start doing it. If you're a crotchety old guy and and you're coming and you're yelling and you're pointing and your face is red, they don't want to do it. They're not motivated, right? So inspiring and motivating people to just get after it, right? And that's the goal.
Yeah,
here.
I think what's really funny to me sometimes is you ask somebody, do you think I'm a good leader, or are you a good leader? And they say, yeah, I'm a good leader. The interesting thing is there are no leaders without followers, and vice versa.
There's no leaders without teams.
Right. I think sometimes people lose sight of the fact that the ego takes over, and they say, I'm a great leader because people do what I tell them to do. But that's not what leadership is. My job description
says I'm a leader.
Right, which really is not the case.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting, because the way you and I met was through a program with Dale Carnegie to try to get better at doing things. And some of that is that people don't necessarily want to get better. Sometimes, somebody has to be honest with them and give them some good feedback to say, hey, maybe you should consider X, Y, Z. And sometimes it's all in that delivery, to get people to question themselves and say, man, maybe I did do this wrong, or maybe there is a different way to do it. And that's what I really liked about Dale Carnegie, because it gives you those tools and some tools to improve your relationships and your skills.
Yeah, it adds. So like adding more tools to your toolbox, right? That's the old analogy. You reach back into your toolbox and pull something out, but depending on different situations. And what I liked about how we met was in that class, we kind of gravitated to each other a little bit just because of the military side.
Yeah.
I don't think there was anyone else really in there that was, you were still pretty much, you were active duty then, you were recruiting.
Was I recruiting at
Yeah,
that
you were
point?
recruiting.
I think
officers.
Yeah, I was recruiting at that time.
So, and I believe that was full time, you were active duty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Stationed here in Grand Rapids. And what I liked about it was we kind of had a connection in the class, and 12-week course, and 25, 30 people in the course maybe.
Probably, yeah.
And what I really enjoyed was watching people coming in. There's various different people. I already know all this stuff, I don't need to get better, to the really shy, really did not want to get up and talk in front of people and everything else. And the transformation that the people went through was, in my mind, was some of those people just made huge strides. Life-changing strides.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I think both of us gained things out of this class that impacted us moving forward. And not only did we take the class together, but then we coached several other classes afterwards for probably 2 years, on and off. Well, at least a year, right?
Yeah, it was almost 2 years.
Almost 2 years where we would coach and we would help the instructor with the classing. So technically we got to take the class over and over and over, right? So again, that thick head driving the points home, really life-changing. If you really apply the things you learn, it can be life-changing. And life-changing in the way of how you approach people, not only at work, but at home, right? Or your friends or whatever in the community, even strangers, right? So really exciting stuff. And again, the biggest thing I think we need to face or focus on is nobody, like all these books I've read on leadership and all the things I've learned about leadership, nobody's coming up with something new.
Right.
It's stuff that's been around for probably thousands of years. I mean, literally.
Right.
It's just how they do it. It's the examples they use, but the principles are all pretty much the same. And military has their principles of leadership. Civilian world, they're pretty much all the same kind of thing. And that's what's exciting, is just keep sharpening that saw. Take that saw out of your toolbox and keep sharpening it, and really exciting. I actually had a leader one time. Well, actually I had a boss one time that came to me and said, "You need to be a better leader." Okay, and I asked, in what format are you talking there? What do you mean? The answer shocked me. It didn't really hit me until a couple days later when I thought about it. The answer was, "You need to be more like me." And after I thought about that for a while, that right there shows me that he wasn't a very good leader, right? Because it's not a square peg in a square hole. Everyone is different. The principles are all the same. So he could have come out and said, "Well, I think you need to get stronger in this area or in this area, stop going Marine, whatever." But instead it was like, "You need to be more like me." And he was my leader because he was my boss. Looking back on it with things that you and I have experienced together in Dale Carnegie, with a future job, my current job, interacting with various different people, customers in the automotive sector, you deal with a lot of people. He wasn't a good leader. And he wasn't a strong leader. He was a leader, but he led more by title, and he tried to use example, but it wasn't very strong.
Right.
I think we've both seen leaders that are at the 50,000 foot level all the time. They're always thinking up here, and then as you mentioned earlier, then they don't have that compassion and they don't have that human interaction. They're all about the number and all about the strategic plan. And I've seen leaders down here that are in the trenches the whole time, not thinking anything above the trenches, right? So is that good or bad? I think somewhere in the middle of there is good, a balance, if you will.
Right.
I think that's where people are going to get their most benefit out of leadership principles and skills.
Yeah, it's interesting because it reminds me of somebody I met while I was recruiting Dale Carnegie and everything. Denny Gillem. And I use his name because he's
phenomenal.
He's a great guy.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give him a shameless plug. Frontlines of Freedom. Check him out. We'll link the description
Radio show.
below.
Radio show.
Frontlines of Freedom.
Yeah, Frontlines of Freedom on the, but it's radio.
Yeah, it's a radio show, but he has a Facebook page and stuff like that. So we'll link his Frontlines of Freedom website down below. You can
Absolutely.
listen to his podcast and stuff.
He's phenomenal.
Great guy. He taught me a lot about leadership. He was a Vietnam era guy, couple Purple Hearts.
He's a colonel, right? I think
He was
colonel.
he was a retired colonel.
Yeah.
He was a frontline fighter, though. He
Yes,
was a
absolutely.
guy in the trenches.
Vietnam. Yeah.
And so he taught me a lot. He's kind of one of those mentor, in my opinion, mentor guys. When you call him up and say, "Hey, what do you think about this, Denny? What do you think about that, Denny?" Super guy. So I think one of the things you mentioned before, good leaders, bad leaders. I think the thing that's really important is to learn from those experiences, whether the positive takeaway is, that wasn't the best leader. I learned this or that from that person, and then I'm going to take what I think works well for me, and I'm going to move with that, and I'm going to stay away from these activities that I don't feel are, because some of those activities work
For them.
better for somebody and they don't. For example, in the manufacturing industry, sometimes the labor force needs specific direction. So where you or I may take that as an insult to our intelligence, or hey, I don't need you to tell me how
Ego.
to do.
Ego, right?
Yeah, exactly. In some cases, some of the labor force wants that direction because it releases the responsibility of them for making decisions. So it's how you kind of interact with them and kind of teach them and coach them into a different way of looking at their jobs.
Right.
And to me, that's where your leadership skills really have to come into play, because, are you going to be able to inspire somebody who is making $10 an hour to put their heart and soul into that 8-hour shift or that 10-hour shift or that 12-hour shift? So to me, trying to figure those things out is a leader's responsibility to try to make that person's work experience better.
Where I work currently now, we manufacture parts mainly for the automotive industry, but for a lot of other industries too. But it's mainly automotive, and it's stuff you'd never see on a car. It's the adhesives and the foam blocks and things that stop squeaks and rattles, hold things in place, the body side,
Right.
things like that. So a lot of our launches and new parts are sometimes afterthoughts, like when they're putting the car together in the design mode. Oh, this is squeaking. Let's get a piece in there, and it's so the time frames are truncated and everything else. So what's interesting about what you just said is, you can the workforce, managers included, can lose sight of the big picture pretty quick when they're down in that trench. And one tool out of the tool bag does not fit all situations, right? So being able to adapt, if I came down and said to my team, "Yeah, guys, this isn't me. The boss is saying to do this, kind of thing. We got to go get this done. Again, it's not coming from me. I know you're not going to like it." That's the wrong approach, right? Buy into it. Understand the commander's intent, the leader's intent of what they want to get done. You don't have to agree, and a good leader will allow you to have that conversation with them. Hey, I don't necessarily agree with this, but can we talk about it and understand it a little bit more? Well, when it's time to go out and get it done, commit to it, own it. Go out, get it done, get the troops, rally the troops, inspire the troops. I use a lot of military vernacular, so inspire the workforce and the team to go get it done. And I think that's, like you said, you're going to need to adjust. You're going to be able to absorb from this person, this mentor in your life, if you will, one way they did it and another way they did it here, and then you may come up with your own way. The key is it's got to be genuine, right? You're going to inspire people when you're genuine, when you're not micromanaging, when you're not dictating, right? And again, that all kind of goes back to ego and goes back to job title is critical and really important. And sure, a lot of people, job titles are important. But that's, again, stroking the ego. Not that just because you have a job title doesn't mean you're getting the work done.
Right. There's a book I read, The Speed of Trust. It's probably one of the best books I've read in years. It's very difficult to apply the principles. It seems very simple. And the concepts, like you said earlier, are not earth-shattering, brand new stuff that somebody just pulled out of the hat last week. But again, The Speed of Trust is a really, it's not a long book. It's an easy read, but trying to apply some of the principles. And it really opened my eyes to the fact that trust is a huge part of leadership. And in my opinion, if you don't have trust, you're not leading anybody.
You can't be a leader. Yeah.
All you're doing is
You're a manager.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
you're
it's
using your job title.
it's called command and control, right?
Yeah.
So that's along the lines of intimidation, power hungry,
Do it because I
egos,
said.
and all those types of things. Because sometimes insecure leaders use that tactic because they're not really sure what else. They
I've
really
been there.
don't have another skill to use. So well, if you don't do what I say, you're fired. Well, to me, that's a weak leader.
Right. Absolutely. That's a
So
statement.
the questions should be around, listen, I assigned this task to you. I gave you the tools. You've been trained. What is your blockage? And how can I help you remove that blockage so that you're more effective? And you give that reassurance and that trust to that person, it's going to go a lot further. But it takes so much time to build that. So the intriguing part of that is the speed of trust, right? So there's some interesting concepts in that book. And I think, some of these things that we read and we go over, I think we should probably maybe, on our YouTube channel, we'll put a link to those Amazon books, and people can just go and check them out. If they like them, great, and if they don't.
I would really love the potentially on future shows to be able to take some of the books we've read and some of the things that we have gravitated to or learned from, and even do almost like a book review and really deep dive into the books, because like I said, it's all not new stuff they're coming up with, but some of the books I've read recently, the most recent is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, two career Navy SEAL guys in the Battle of Ramadi, 2006. Jocko was the leader of that SEAL component over there, SEAL Team Task Unit Bruiser, SEAL Team 3. Charlie Delta platoons. Leif was in charge of Charlie platoon. Chris Kyle, American sniper, he was Leif's point man and lead sniper in Ramadi. Phenomenal guys. Obviously, we all know that. If you don't know, you should go learn the history of the Battle of Ramadi in 2006. Phenomenal military strategy where these SEALs integrated with conventional units, Army and Marine Corps units that were already there, bleeding and dying every day. The SEALs came in, and along with the leadership of the Army units that they were attached to, did a militarily exceptional job of taking that city back, a city of 400,000 people. And they systematically, with processes, with execution, and with extreme ownership of the situation, they went and got it done. And I'd love to be able to, like you said, not only link the books in the description and stuff, but potentially get into down the road, deep diving them a little bit and talking about them. Not reading the book to everybody. Jocko has a podcast. You can go listen to him talk about the same things. And what's nice is about this, Mike, I think is what you and I are doing is, I think we'll be able to have these conversations, and somebody may be watching and go, hey, I'm not getting anything from these guys. These are two guys just pumping their gums, But maybe you go check out Jocko, you go check out some other strong leaders, and learn from them. The key is just learn. If you don't learn anything from us, we apologize. Our goal is to help people learn, but we're both learning as we do this, which I think is really critical, again, to keep sharpening that saw. So absolutely, I love the idea of being able to link things in the descriptions below. And then we're also looking for feedback. So if you are watching this, we're looking for feedback. My boss, Kurt, told me, and I don't think he created this, but he believes it. Feedback's a gift. So whether that feedback's positive or negative, it's a gift, and we can adapt and we can change and we can make some changes to how we do things, and we can get better. And that's what this is all about.
This is our first show, folks. So like I said, we're really excited to bring this information to you. If there's something you want us to do, or maybe there's a book you want us to review, just put that book in the comments and we'll go out and grab it and we'll read it. There are so many different leadership points, leadership tactics, leadership principles, just relationship building stuff that you can go out and read. And we could probably talk for hours on just one topic, like trust, for example, or, confidence, or whatever it is. There's tons of topics that we can talk about. So if you have something specific you'd like us to review or look at, put it in comments. We'd love your feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting about what you said with trust is, really the fundamental principles of leadership, like we said, are all this. They've been the same forever. without trust, you can't engage, right? If you're my leader and I don't trust you, then the minute you tell me something, I'm going to be like, oh, why does he want me to do this today? You know,
Right.
or oh, he's just telling me what to do. He just wants to boss me around.
What's his angle?
Yeah.
Everybody's got an angle.
And it's got to be authentic trust. You got to build trust with your teams, and one of the principles in extreme ownership is lead down the chain, lead up the chain. You need to be able to lead both ways,
Right.
And that's kind of a strange. To some people, that might be strange about leading up the chain of command, if you will, or up the organizational chart. But you can. And if you're an influencer, if you're a change agent, you can use principles to do that, to really address it. So, Mike, I think we're having some really good conversations here. Hopefully, everyone out there is enjoying these conversations. And again, the goal is to learn a little bit, take a little bit away. But I'd like to ask you a question, Mike. Do you have any examples that come up to your mind on the principles of leadership involving trust? Maybe we've talked about trust. I think one of the things we might want to do moving forward is a future podcast, probably soon, we talk about the trust. We take that Speed of Trust book you talked about and we really break that down, because I think you've said, trust is a foundational principle of leadership.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And one of the things that Jocko and Leif talk about is there's no leader without a team. So if your team doesn't trust you and they don't want to work for you, you're not going to be their leader, right? So I think that's important. But do you have an example of maybe a couple different examples of some leadership principles or trusts that you can show?
I mean, so I was on a project team for a while with my current company, and I'm going to try to stay away from a lot of military principles and military examples. I mean, I've been in the Navy 30 years, but trying for most of our audience to work with civilian related experiences.
They're similar, but you're right. You can get a little complicated with
So I transitioned from a project team when I first joined the company back in 2014. I transitioned to a project team, and to integrate into that team was pretty challenging. So I knew going into the team, there was 6 of us, and I knew going into that team there was going to be some pretty good challenges. And I had to have some type of philosophy going into it, right? So I had met everybody on that team when they came to our plant to give us this new system that we put in place. So all those changes, right? When things change, people get uneasy because it's unknown territory and it makes them nervous. So going into that new environment, I had to figure out how to integrate myself without causing problems, because that team had been together for a couple of years.
You don't want to disrupt it. Yeah.
And so my approach was to kind of just listen and learn. That's usually not my mantra. My mantra is that I'm all in, I'm vocal. Sometimes my filter doesn't work 100%. I really went in with the attitude of I'm just going to observe and try to pay attention to what's going on, learn from everybody, not be critical. And it was challenging, because in my company, if you're new to the environment, you don't have a whole lot to offer. That's my perception. That can be totally
you're in
off.
the industry. You're in the food industry, so it's pretty.
Yeah, but it's the organizational culture of the company I work for.
Right.
It's not a bad thing. It's just something that you have to try to figure out and decipher.
Correct.
So that you can integrate and socialize correctly. Because if not, it's going to be a tough environment for you.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but when you started there, you spent like the first year literally in training.
Yeah.
Yes. So most companies don't take that approach. They're not only trying to train you up in what they want you to be strong in, but also just their philosophy and their culture.
Right. So it was interesting because I started with the project in April of 2014. And I want to say it was in July, maybe. Yeah, it was probably in July. My boss announced to us that they were going to create 2 new positions in our group, 2 senior lead positions. So we were leads at that time, and they were going to create 2 senior lead positions. And so, the boss went to everybody and said, hey, we're going to create these positions. I encourage everybody to apply on the team. Only 3 of us did.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Only 3.
Now, from a military standpoint, everybody would have applied, right? But in this particular company, in this environment, only 3 of the 6 or 7 of us, I can't remember, there might have even been 8 of us that applied, myself and 2 others. It was interesting to me how much friction that caused. So you started to get camps, I call them. So
clicks.
Yeah. So the camp over here was on this person's side, the camp over here was on this person's side, and the camp over here was on this person's side. And it was really interesting to me because I was told, you shouldn't apply for it because you don't have the experience and you don't have this and you don't have that. So in the end, I was promoted being the other individual, and I asked my boss, why me? My knowledge of the food industry is pretty limited. My experience with manufacturing is fairly limited, and a couple other things. And his response to me was, "We didn't hire you for your process knowledge or product knowledge. We hired you for your leadership skills." So, that's a good confidence booster. At the same time,
ego stroke kind of thing.
Yeah, but at the same time, it caused a lot of challenges with the team.
And also the new guys in charge.
So we didn't have any reporting. This was the interesting part of it. Myself and the other person that was promoted didn't have any authority. We all still reported to the same boss.
You just had added responsibilities.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to me because in my opinion, in my perception, it caused some challenges in our ability to be effective because there was more emotional friction with that process than there was focusing on the task at hand. So it took a little while, in my approach to try to just sit back and not, cause waves or anything.
Yeah, I'm in charge now.
I didn't take that approach.
No, I know that's what I'm saying. You avoided that.
But it was still a lot of tension because instead of focusing, like I said, on the task, there were people focusing on noise. Why did he get the credit? That happened.
It's all the noise to what needs to get done.
Yeah, and that went about for it. All worked out in the end, but when you're in the middle of trying to figure that out, it can be a little stressful. So I learned a lot from that process, not only about different approaches to take, but also about myself and how I sometimes take too much on that people say. Instead of being focused on what I know is important, I start listening to some of that noise that's around me and some of that static, and it causes some problems.
So that was a good analogy because, like we mentioned earlier, right? There's a balance, right? So you want to be able to hear that, some of it, and be able to either learn from it or adapt to it or squash it, right? There's all kinds of different approaches to the noise, or my boss likes to call it unproductive communication, right? So if we're in a situation like that, if everyone's focused on why did Mike get this position versus what's the goal of the team, what's our direction, what's our commander's intent to move forward and get this done, and the bosses have picked Mike to be a senior leader, let's go, let's get on board, let's own it, right? And I think it's very similar to the analogies that I read in, and again, I'm going to shamelessly keep plugging Extreme Ownership as a good leadership book. But they have a story in there, a real brief story here on during BUDS, which is the BUDS is the 27-week training to become a Navy SEAL, and within BUDS, that 27 weeks, there's a hell week, right, where they keep these guys up pretty much for 7 days, physically, mentally, just challenging them to uncompared to anything else in the world. And they carry these big rubber boats over their heads, these teams. Each team has a leader, and there's 7 or 8 guys on the team, and they have races, non-stop races. And these races are extremely physically and mentally challenging, carrying these boats over your head, throwing them, running down into the ocean, paddling out, half a mile, down the beach, 2 miles. Very, very exhausting. And they're numbered. The boat teams are numbered. So Team 6 was winning. I think it was Team 6 was winning every race. And if you win the race, you got to sit out the next race. So there was like some incentive there for these guys. boat 2 was coming in last pretty much all the time. And the leader of that boat crew felt bad pull of the straw because I got a bad team, right? So what I was saying earlier, there's no bad teams. There's only bad leaders. So what they did is they flipped those boat crew leaders. That's all they did was just say, you're in charge of 2 now, you're in charge of 6 now. The very next race, the crew that was coming in last all the time finished a very close second. And then after that, they were winning every race. So the team had the skill, the leaders swapped. The team that was winning all the time still performed very well, but their performance did go down a little bit. But that wasn't, it was more the performance of boat 2 went up with that leader. And it's the approach. So had that leader gone into that scenario, like you coming into the scenario you're in, and said, we're going to do this my way, I know better, and did it, or didn't build trust with his team, oh great, here's another leader. What's this guy going to tell us to do, right? If he didn't build that trust with them, they would not have performed. But they performed on an extremely high level, right? So the noise, the background, the unproductive communication, the complaining, the stuff that you could have easily gotten caught up in that, right? Into that noise. Again, you might want to listen to it and learn from it a little bit, but you also want to be able to just find ways within yourself to rise above that and to get them to rise above it. And then let's go accomplish the mission.
But that's the real challenge. So oftentimes, the onus gets put on the leader because they're the person of authority, they're positional authority, they have the title of authority and all those fun things. But sometimes it's the followers, and it's 1 or 2 of a group of 6 or 8 that are causing most of the static. So
that's a fair point.
Good leadership has to try to figure out, okay, how do I figure out who the influencers are in the group, and how do I get them on board? Because once you get that 1 or 2 of the people that cause most of the static on board, by however that means, is it building trust? Is it giving them responsibility? Is it giving them authority to make decisions? Is it engaging them in a specific way? And so when you do that, you get the results that you want. The challenge is how to figure out how to do that. And I think that's one of the things that good leaders are open to, is different ideas. My current boss is phenomenal with that. He's very level-headed. He's very steady, and he gives you the opportunity to talk, and he, without judgment, from my perception, without judgment, listens to your ideas. And whether he takes them on board or not, or he'll let you know that, hey, maybe this isn't the best way, but this is why. So, yeah, I think in your example, absolutely, that individual must have had some charisma or something about them that people draw to, right?
That connection.
Because some people just have a natural draw, what I call a natural draw. Now, a lot of, I think, academia and practitioners would disagree with that statement. Because some people believe leadership is a skill you're born with, and some people think that leadership is a skill that you develop over time. And there really are some people that think that you're born with the skill, and some.
I would say the truth is in between there, right? I think there are people that just have natural leadership abilities, but you know what? It's all learned behavior, right? Everything, the minute you're born, you're learning, and it's all learned behavior and what you do with those skill sets. My boss, similar to your boss, I can't remember in 4 years, I can't remember a time where he's just flat out said to me, no, we're not doing your idea. It's a dumb idea. He's never said that.
Right.
He's listened. He's a believer that conflict is okay when done the right way, when done productively, right? So he's big on emotional control. And there's myself and several other people at work that we constantly have to live in that world of thinking about emotional control and trying to maintain that emotional control. So you said your boss kind of stays level-headed. He listens. He's open to ideas. Similar situation I'm in. But even to that end, debate is okay, right? He encourages challenging the ideas so we can collectively work to a better idea. And that would not happen if there wasn't trust. That would not happen if there was ego, right?
Right.
So those two, ego and the trust and everything, you have to develop it over time. It's an interesting thing because he hired me, right? So he came to the company. He came from the parent company down to the company I'm currently at. A couple months after he got in as the general manager, he hired me. So I came in to a team that some of these people have been there for 10, 15 years. He's new to them. I'm new to them. I had to build trust with them. I had some automatic trust with my boss because he hired me. He gave me the opportunity, right? Where he inherited, or a lot of the other guys at the company inherited him as a new boss. So it was real interesting to watch the dynamic of them learning the trust factor and learning, okay, what's this guy all about? I think we have one guy there that said he's had in 8 years he had 6 different bosses.
Oh yeah, that's yeah.
So you're going into it with skepticism, and you're going into it with, okay, what's this guy's deal, you know? And to watch that develop, the trust and the development over time, has it been easy? It could have been a lot. It could have been a lot harder if egos got in the way. Egos really didn't get in the way, which was nice to see. So I think your point is really good with, you know, when there's a team and there's a leader of the team by title, that's great. There could also be a leader of the team by action, right? So you were saying you want to find the shakers and the movers and the people that are the change agents within your small team. And you want to be able to approach them, find out what motivates them, and get them, in essence, to believe in the commander's intent, to believe in the mission, right?
So some of the things that we want is to just present ideas to you guys, because we want to learn from you too. And we can do that through the comments. So if we could get interaction and some ideas, we'll be looking at the comments. And so, you know, again, if there's things that you really want to talk about or experiences that you had, let us know about them, because we're excited to hear about them.
Yeah, and I think through that feedback's a gift. I think we'll be able to really improve ourselves, take those as good positive and negative comments, and improve upon it and present some good topics. Really would like to hear, you know, what kind of topics you guys would like. What books? If you have books, suggestions of books. If you have suggestions of other topics you want to hear about, we may get down the road and potentially be able to do, you know, if there's a product that somebody wants us to review or something like that. We can do a lot of different things with this. Obviously, we can go in a lot of different directions. Our main mission, our main focus currently right now is to just have these continuing conversations on principles. But we can take this in a lot of different directions. That is a proactive, you know, positive approach. I think we both are committed to not getting up here and being, you know, critical of other people in our lives. Just not the right forum for that. You know, so hopefully we can present things in a manner that somebody can take something from it. And if not, flip the channel, go to another one, try to learn from them, go to Jocko, go to I think you've seen a couple of different podcasts of people on YouTube that have things going on. So
I watch a ton of YouTube videos. So it's, you know, I think that for me is what kind of inspired doing this with Tom, because, you know, I bought some equipment and I wanted to do some YouTube videos, and this just, you know, it's like one of those things, everything happens for a reason. And I truly believe that. So here I am with Tom. We're recording a podcast, and it's going to be good fun. So, you know, it really is cool to hear what you guys have to say. So certainly, you know, put it in the comments.
Put it down there. We have a YouTube page, obviously, where you're probably watching this. We have a Facebook page, Two Guys in a Podcast, same as the YouTube page. So please, you know, leave comments on either. We'll monitor them, and we're working on a website. We'll try to get this thing going and make it long lasting, so we can, you know, really benefit from it, and hopefully you can benefit from it too. Funny story on that is I started thinking about doing a podcast, and again, Jocko has a podcast, and a lot of his podcasts, he's interviewing people from the military. But it's all about these principles. So they use the stories from the military or from their civilian lives to talk about the principles. And it's entertaining for me because it's the whole military connection. And I mean, these guys are true warriors, and to hear about the tough situations they were in, and what they did from a leadership perspective to either encourage or help or save lives or whatever the case may be, pretty positive. So that kind of inspired me to want to do the same thing, continue those conversations. Like when I was thinking about it, Mike's the first person that popped into my mind. Like who would I want to partner with on this? And I thought, Mike would be perfect for this. So called you up, and you were looking to do something at the same time.
And the interesting thing about that, folks, is that Tom and I aren't two guys that saw each other all the time. We met several years ago through Dale Carnegie, and we've kind of kept in touch every couple of months or every 2, 3, 4, 5 months, whatever it was. So for this to come together and for us to actually get some things out there so for you folks to watch is pretty exciting. And I think it's just a testament to, again, everything happens for a reason. So he and I are going to be doing this. We're going to be getting these videos out on a regular basis. He's the guy behind the scenes. He's doing all the producing. I'm just a pretty face.
Yeah.
But again, we want to bring, good content to you, exciting content to you, ideas that two average guys are working through life and learning as we go too. So certainly it's going to be exciting to interact with you folks.
And as we do this, I think we're learning. We're going to be constantly learning not only about the principles and topics and things we're talking about, but we're going to be learning about doing this, right? Doing the audio, doing the visual, doing the the podcast in general. So every show we're going to critique. We're going to look at it, constructive criticism, and we're going to try to improve and bring you guys a better show. Every time we do this. Our goal right now, our commitment right now, is a weekly show. So. Hopefully you enjoy the videos. Hopefully you get something out of them. Definitely we'll be talking about what will be coming up on future shows. We know right now we want to talk more about leadership, maybe do some book reviews, get into the Speed of Trust book, get into extreme ownership, maybe a couple different books we've experienced and learned, because that'll give us good reference material to really get in and talk some hard-hitting topics. But we also will hopefully be able to let you know what's coming up. So at the end of today's show, we're going to say, okay, next week we're going to talk about this, and hopefully we can get this rolling and really knock out some good videos, and you guys will enjoy it. And that's our intent. If nothing else, Mike, I'm learning from this experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate you committing to want to do this, and selfishly to help me, right? So ever since we met, you and I we'd spend Dale Carnegie class with Ed, and we'd spend 45 minutes sitting outside talking.
Class, yep.
And I appreciated every one of those comments, and we all had real life things going on at the time, and we still do, and everyone has those. So you have your professional life going on, you have your personal life going on, but you know what? These principles apply to everything. These principles can be used in any scenario, any situation, whether, again, it's from the extreme life or death situation of Navy SEALs on the front line, or if it's, working with the temporary contract employee that just came in to do a job for the next 3 weeks. These principles apply to all those and everywhere in between there. With personal life, friends, things like that. I think we also might be able to get into, some guests, potentially have some guests on maybe.
Yeah.
Find out, be awesome to get Denny Gillem on. I mean, Denny's a phenomenal guy. Get someone like him on, get a couple different people I've met over the years. People you've met over the years, or just local people that we know that could add to this conversation. And that's really what this is going to be, guys, is a weekly continuation of a conversation. The conversation will kind of go all over, but that's our intent, is to just have these conversations. The more we talk about them, the more we can reinforce them. And literally someone might be able to take one little tidbit away that benefits them in their lives, and that's kind of our goal, I think, our mission.
Yeah, something Tom said earlier about when we were in Dale Carnegie together and seeing the transition of somebody who was, really timid or really just frustrated with life or really just in a rut, and 3, 4, 5 weeks into the 12-week course, in that 7th week or so, you just see a light come on. And so being able to share the topics that we want to talk about, or that you tell us you want to hear about, and seeing that evolution of change is, for me, why I'm inspired to do the show. Because if one person can get something out of it, whether it's a book review, whether it's a concept whether it's a story that we told that said, I'm having that same problem at work myself. And hey, maybe what Mike said or what Tom said, maybe that approach will work with this person. Maybe it won't, but you won't know until you try it. And it's, my brother-in-law says, and I think this is kind of a popular thing, it's never the destination, it's always the journey to the destination. So I try to focus that, and that rings in my head all the time. It's always the process. It's never the final result, because the final result or the destination might change. You might set out to go camping or a motorcycle ride or something like that. Next thing you know, you're going to, you're going to Alaska, and then you end up in Hawaii. So it's always the journey that you're taking that makes the difference.
Yeah, and I think one of the things too that I like to use is analogies and things. Is I have these things called. You're watching NCIS, the TV show NCIS.
Once or twice.
So the main character in there, Gibbs, he's got Gibbs rules, right? So he's got all these 49 rules or whatever he has. Like rule number 9, always carry a knife. Little things like that, little tidbits. So I have weightisms, and I actually got them from my grandfather. He gave me the first one. He said, Tom, there's the wrong way to do things, and then there's the way to do things, right? So that was like my first weightism. But since then, and I've got 20, 25 some odd of them. Anytime I hear somebody say something that really speaks to me and really is kind of a catchy little analogy, I'll write it down and make it my own. So my first one though is, if you're not having fun doing what you're doing, you shouldn't be doing it. So I think with this podcast, if we're not having fun doing this, which I think that's going to be impossible. I think we're going to have fun no matter what.
Right.
And these may be the worst podcasts in the world. This may be we're going to have fun, right? And that's our goal. So we're not really going to try to talk about real heavy topics. That's not true. We're going to talk about some heavy topics.
There may be some.
We're going to have, I know one of the people that we may be interviewing on an upcoming podcast is a wounded warrior from Afghanistan that has been through some pretty intense trauma. So that's going to be a heavy topic, but you know what? It's what we make out of it, and it's what we be able to present to you guys, and he's going to be able to bring a lot to it. So anyway, that's the goal, is to have fun doing this, get better at it every time, but hopefully be able to provide some useful information.
Yeah, because Tom and I aren't always going to agree. We get along really well, but
yeah,
we're going to have some
boring
difference of opinion every once in a while.
This would be boring if we did, right? This wouldn't be very good if we did. So while we have a lot of symmetries, we're gonna be able to take the yin and yang approach sometimes on some things, and that'll be good, and we'll do that in an effective manner and communicate in an effective method that benefits everybody.
Absolutely.
So I think job well done today, Mike. I think this podcast went pretty well. Future podcasts, I think we'll probably continue our conversation on leadership and probably roll into to trust, break down some of the principles within leadership, teamwork. Those Navy SEALs call that cover and move, and if you really think about it, there's no better example of teamwork. Cover and move. I'm going to cover you while you move, and then you're going to cover me while I move. Pretty solid essence of what teamwork's all about. So, trust, leadership, principles, ego, emotional control, anything. You guys leave in the comments below what you want us to hear about. We're going to obviously have our agendas and what we want to talk about, but we also want to interact with you guys and hear what you have to say. So I think we're off and running. I think this will be a good time.
Stay tuned. There's going to be some exciting topics. We're gonna get into some really good stuff. So stay tuned each week. We're going to be consistent. We're going to get the videos out to you, and certainly we really, really want to get your feedback. So certainly leave the comments below. We're going to have some links to the books that we kind of mentioned, links to Denny's website and Facebook page and stuff like that. So certainly check out the notes and the links below. Yeah, and definitely subscribe. Like us on Facebook, 2 Guys in a Podcast. YouTube, 2 Guys in a Podcast. You're going to look for that red circle with the number 2 in it for 2 Guys. But definitely go ahead and subscribe, like us, come back next week, and we'll continue this conversation then. Thanks, Mike. Thank you, Tom.
Well, that does it for this week's show. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on 2 Guys in a Podcast.